Welcome to PhD with Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hacks delivered will be by Claudia Borg. Topic exploring language models and AI ethics with Claudia Borg. Episode 148 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you're exploring language models and AI ethics. First, let me mention a couple of things that's been happening in the world of technology. Hooray to Mala Aurora for her dedication and passion on the WIT committee for being an exemplary role model, and to Simran Gunman as well and the domain team for the support of the whole Women in Tech Accelerate event. Cheers to your first event and hopefully many more. Congratulations to Victoria Blinova, strategic partner manager at YouTube, on receiving the Galactic Explorer Award from the International Space Alliance and Women Tech Makers. Get over that syndrome, Victoria, because you are worth it. She was just sharing how she's got imposter syndrome and she doesn't feel like sharing it. Well, sharing is caring. If you care about women in technology, you should share as much content as you can, as many great, exciting happenings in the world of technology, and not only whatever rocks your boat. Finally, kudos to our former PhD guest, Leszek Król, and the Hyperhumans team for their success. Their product, Neuralink, was named the top product on Poland's leading product site, Radar Premier. Now, let's go back to our topic, exploring language models and AI ethics. Could AI reshape our future and redefine our relationship with technology? In this episode 148, we explore this question with Dr. Claudia Borg, Senior Lecturer at the University of Malta's Department of Artificial Intelligence. Dr. Borg, a trailblazer in natural language processing and AI applications. There you go. I could do some AI transcription here and AI speaking here for me. For the Maltese language, she's been developing it for quite some time. And actually, we met during Women in Tech events in Malta back in 2017, I believe. And we formed a great, formidable organization called eSkills Malta. Hopefully, AI will replace that male leading the panel. Anyway, since we are talking about AI and replacing, we will be talking about, will AI replace humans? Of course, it's a very boring question. So we have more interesting topics, biases in AI language models and how women are affected by these biases. Ethical implications of AI. Well, you just stay with us if you want to learn more about what Dr. Borg has discovered and what she's working on and what we can learn from each other in this episode. So stay tuned. So, Claudia, will you allow me to call you Claudia or you prefer Dr. Borg?
No, please, not even my students call me Dr. Borg.
Claudia, it's a pleasure, and I have to tell everybody that Claudia was the keynote speaker during our inaugural launch in 2019 of Women on IT. In May 2019, she delivered a speech about AI, its implications, and nobody talked about AI at that time. They were talking all about blockchain, right?
Yes. Yes, indeed. It's great to see how women in IT have your grassroots organization has developed. So congrats! I follow it, so it's good.
Thank you so much, Claudia. I'm delighted that you follow it because this support really means a lot to me because I remember our humble beginnings and our frustration and how we were talking about in 2017 how we can encourage more women in tech. And I knew that deep down, the problem is not the top-down model, it's really the grassroots organization. Women coming together, trying to talk to each other and having this unique opportunity, unique forum to share vision, talk about struggles, and actually boost each other up by showcasing amazing role models like yourself.
Yes, indeed. I agree that we do have to make an effort as women to come together, and even just sharing our experiences, right, is already an eye opener, just because what I experience might not be the same as what you experience. So bringing together different perspectives with the shared commonality is always a big benefit to the grassroots.
Oh, absolutely. As Melinda Gates has said in one of the interviews, the thing in common with many women, because she's been blessed to travel all over the world, and she was sitting somewhere in Africa on the floor and on the ground, and the biggest commonality was the struggles of females and how to empower them was the real issue here. Hence, Woman on It is actually trying to focus on bringing these leadership skills, these not so easy to obtain skills, because it's so nice to do your PhD in AI and so on, but really the struggle is how to get to the top of the to become a deacon. Is that your ambition, Claudia?
So I, to be honest, my ambition was always in terms of research, right? So I had this vision to work in AI, and in particular, the AI aspect that deals with language, and in particular, that deals with Maltese language, right? So, and I just kept that focus, that vision, always coming up with projects, with collaborations, and trying to build as much as I can around that vision. The becoming, let's say, a trailblazer, and all these things, I think, is a side product. So I don't it's not like I'm telling myself, to get to the top I have to do this or that. There is no top as such. It's what I want to achieve, and just focusing on that. It's not about the position per se.
Well, I believe, Claudia, there is an issue here because, the best way to encourage young girls to go for certain industry is by showcasing women like you. And I
Mhm.
think we had that discussion. So bear with me, ladies and gentlemen, whoever is watching or listening to us, we're going to talk about AI. But really, AI needs to learn that there are lots of women in power who are doing research. And at the moment, it's
Of course.
mostly men who are doing research, and they are
Mhm.
testing it on their counterparts who are also men. So, how is AI going to learn that there are awesome females who are doing awesome research if the test bed is always, white guys talking to white guys about other white guys?
Yeah, I mean, look, this happens not just in AI, it's in any sector, or rather, not any sector, but several sectors. So, if you think of a surgeon, it's usually male dominated, AI is male dominated. There are several areas that are typically male dominated, and then there are areas which are typically female dominated, right? Now the I think the key point here is what is very particular about AI is, of course, that we are building models, right? And these models are learning from the data that we feed. And the data that we feed, if it contains the data, that all it sees in text is that males tend to be surgeons, then it's going to learn that males surgeons are always male, and it will go to that by default. So yes, it is important to speak about and showcase people in several sectors that are that are, let's say, leading in terms of the diversity aspect, for the simple reason that that in itself creates data which eventually can feed into AI models.
Mm. So there is also the pronoun bias, because the models might generate sentences, especially like in Polish. Uh, there are sentences that are male or female, so masculine or feminine, and AI may always presume. And I was quite frustrated with my phone for a while before I actually worked on all the words, because quite often it would suggest first off the masculine ending of the
Yes.
sentence. So it can be really frustrating. So maybe the concept should be AI should be more conversational with us rather than just talk at us.
At the end of the day, AI, you have to think of a model in terms of the data, right? Because the intelligence factor per se, especially the models that we have um, to date, are not the same type of intelligence that we understand in terms of human intelligence. This is a different type of intelligence. We can call it machine intelligence, artificial intelligence. That's the whole name of the game. But so the way we think and the way we might perceive as fixing a potential problem might not necessarily be the same solution that we would apply to an AI model.
Mm.
So of course we need solutions in the long term. Um, and the good thing is that through AI models, and I'm talking, AI models for the past 10 years that have been used in industry and so on, where, the gender bias became evident over time in different types of models. Through these examples, we gained this knowledge, we gained this awareness of how important the data is and how important it is to find ways to try to mitigate these biases. Does it mean that we have found solutions? No, not yet. I think we're not nowhere close. We are definitely better placed than we were, let's say, 2, 3 years ago, but it's still a work in progress.
Mm.
So it's important to keep this in mind. No AI system is going to be perfect from the get go. It's always a work in progress.
So, is there a way, and I'm just pausing here, bear with us, we're gonna post these questions and comments that you're posting. Thank you so much, our community. It's always a pleasure to see people really interested in AI, and then they discover they can do mundane tasks, they can do my I don't know, social media posts for me, but they can't do washing and stuff. This is mundane task. I don't want to do that. Why can't they do that? Anyway, we talked about the swarm or crowd intelligence. So how can we prevent AI from the average intelligence and actually make it better, more intelligent, because this artificial intelligence quite often works on a model that is average model because it works on, and we talked about it before. The first version of ChatGPT, version 2.0, is worse. Then the next version will be even worse, because the more people use it, the more stupid it gets. So can we prevent that?
So one of the problems as well is how you measure the how good a model is. So there are different perspectives to this. But I think what is key here is to understand this evolution of AI. Okay, will take a bit of time. Hopefully, it will progress in a way that is beneficial for all humans, all societies. But one thing that you mentioned, and I would like to highlight, is why don't we have AI that, for instance, does cleans up the kitchen, which is the mundane stuff that I don't want to do. And I think this is something that highlights the importance of diversity in AI, right? Why? Because a woman would come up with defining such a business use case and potentially do the research and come up with potential products. It's not your average guy. The average men in the field, what have they created? They have created AI that can complete code, right? And make it easier to code. Why? Because they're coders themselves. So diversity in AI is going to create diversity in the type of applications that we have.
No, my goodness. We've got a lot of bias coming from both of us because we believe men don't like the task of cleaning the house. Anyway, since we talk about men, who could we mention here? IPOV, in Patrick's opinion. OMG, Beata, you're now suggesting AI is mansplaining. I wonder how that could ever have been trained into the models. There you go. And another comment. Great to see you, Claudia. Thanks for your insights. We also have got a comment from Jane. Hello, Beata and Claudia. Looking forward to listening to today's show. Bright flower, rainbow heart. Love to you too, Jane. And Olga Vasina. Great to see Claudia, a trailblazer in AI and woman on it. Jinxing you, that a great point on the inherent problems of AI sexism. But I have to ask, is AI good for us, or the dangerous precept that some media and politicians would suggest?
Oh, that's a tough question to answer. Like any tool, I don't think there is a blanket answer that says outright it's good or it's bad. There are potential pitfalls, and I think this is the importance as a society in terms of how important it is to emphasize having diversity, having different people sitting around the table, making, giving their input towards AI systems, being part of the conversation. How important it is for me, for someone like me who is technical and maybe has certain expertise in AI, it is still important for me to sit down with someone who maybe doesn't understand that much and just get a sense of their perception of what AI is, what it can do, their fears and their thoughts and their experience of using AI. So AI can definitely be a force for good, and there are a lot of communities, a lot of groups in all over the world working with that intention. But of course, there are other people who might be simply interested in using AI for their benefit, right? And they don't take into consideration the impact that it can have on society in general. So a political situation is a perfect example where, for instance, you have someone who's trying to, lead an election, wants to win at all costs, and does not take into consideration the actual process of democracy in that country. So we've seen this happening in the past in certain countries, and I don't think it will be something that we can at all eradicate. But I believe that it is the importance of educating the population about AI, about its potentials, really learning how to recognize as well AI systems, AI output, right? Because sometimes the line gets so blurred, especially as AI systems do get better, right? Is something generated by an AI or not? It's very difficult to tell. Um, so
We've
it,
seen it that in terms of partisanship, language models might affect the political leanings present in their training data, potentially
yes,
favoring certain political perspective or other views, and also the content is moderated. So actually, I'm the great, when it comes to crowd wisdom, swarm wisdom, however you call it, I like the fact that everybody's brought to the table and everybody can voice their opinion. Of course, there are these stupid likes and dislikes and so on. However, that is more freedom of speech allowing because we need these opinions to really formulate our own opinion, even if it's a chamber opinion or if it's a confirmation bias, which we talked about in previous episodes as well, which is basically you only accept the views that you believe in.
yes, and what happens as well is that AI systems tend to favor presenting you those views, because how the system is geared up is that it is rewarded by the number of times that you click, that you follow its suggestions. And obviously, the more appealing the content is to you, the more you're likely to click. And you continue with this confirmation bias and creating this bubble where you think that everybody is of the same opinion as you are. The education aspect comes in because if we are aware of these pitfalls of technology, then we can outright make a conscious decision and say, oh, okay, I need about for regarding this topic, I need to get a different perspective. I need to be in a position to understand what the other side is trying to say, even if I still don't agree with it, but at the very least, I am exposing myself to those comments and to those thoughts. I don't need to engage. I don't need to go into this social media, arguing and trolling other people and, insisting that I am right. Um, but at the very least, let's, be aware of the potential pitfalls of AI systems and social media.
Conscious using AI is definitely advised. And now we have got Olga Vasina saying, thank you for that wise and measured answer, Claudia. It's frustrating. The media is so clickbait obsessed, and the political classes are all too often so analog around the world, they fear the shock of the new. How
No,
is
indeed.
media in Malta nowadays?
I mean, I think it's the same like everywhere else, right? You have to, you always have to see what sources you are getting your information from, whether they are credible, whether they're reliable. Um, so it is something that is important. Obviously, if you are following a politically leaning newspaper, radio, TV station, whatever it is, um, you should be aware that you're only being presented with one side of the argument and you're not seeing the other side. So, ideally, you find something always as a source that is independent. Sometimes it's true, it's hard to identify what is truly independent, and, in reality, even journalists themselves that work for independent newspapers would have their own biases that would actually come out in their writing. This is, it's human nature. Bias is not something that is, intricately bad and we should get rid of. Bias is something that serves us because what it really means is that I prefer something to something else. So I don't know, I have a bias for the color blue rather than the color red simply because I like that color. But I am aware of that. And if I am presented with something like a friend shows me a red handbag, I'm not going to tell her it is ugly simply because it's red, right? I am aware of what I like and what is accepted. And I think this is something that we need to take it beyond, our maybe more conscious biases, and understand that this also occurs in our unconscious biases.
Hmm. Well, but there are biases that are not quite good for some, for example, generations, because there is socioeconomic bias where language models may generate content that favors or reflects the perspective of higher socioeconomic classes, marginalizing the experiences and views of lower income groups, and also the accessibility, because we know, for example, some countries still don't have you know uh,
Good access to
access,
technology.
yes, access to the internet. So that's also one of the threats. Now we talk about all the problems, but there are solutions. So Claudia, let's focus on these. So how can we mitigate biases? Can you give us example, for example, in terms of female who are struggle with biases during the interview process?
That's a tough one. That's a tough
Mm-hmm.
one. I think, so I sometimes it's really difficult to identify. Let's say you're being asked a particular question, and it's difficult to identify whether that is coming from the interviewer's unconscious bias. So it's actually, an actual bias in terms of gender, for instance, or whether it's simply a question that they outright ask to anyone and everyone. Um, so yes, it's tough to answer, and one cannot necessarily generalize for all job interviews that happen and so on are actually biased. I think one of the main problems, in actual fact, that is really problematic and we can do something about it is the step before arriving to the interview stage, because once you arrive to the interview stage, at least you have human to human um, uh, contact, right? One of the main problems with bias and the bias that's in in AI models, is that a lot of, especially large organizations, are using AI to filter out applications. and to come up with a short list that would be people selected to go ahead for an interview. Now, if this model has some form of gender bias, that is already going to stop a number of women arriving to interview stage more than men. So especially when job the job in question tends to be something that is already biased towards men, right? It's already in favoring men. So I think that is the step that we actually should focus on in terms of AI. Once we are face to face, I think then the person can actually get a sense of the interviewer, whether the question is genuine, whether or not. And I believe you do have some form of indication. What to do about it, I don't have an answer. Because there can be obviously different options. It depends a lot on that particular situation. But what I would advise at the very least is talk about your experience and let someone else share your experience with someone else and see what they think. And always keep in mind that you might potentially be reading bias into something that might have been genuine. So, it's a bit of a difficult scenario. But I think it's better to focus on the previous step and making sure that women do arrive to the interview stage, because that is, I think, the major stumbling block.
And I think there is another pointer, which is women do become champions of the university, and they actually have this courage to ask to become a deacon one day, Claudia. Hint, hint. Anyway, going back to our conversation about AI. So, how is AI impacting education? I was wondering whether AI will replace Claudia someday.
Most likely. And actually, hopefully I will have an AI assistant that really does a lot of my work so that I can do even more, right? Always think in terms of productivity. I honestly believe, I think AI, especially for the next, I would say, 5 years. Okay, it's something that's evolving very fast. But for the next 5 years, I think AI is going to be acting more as an assistant rather than as a replacement. 5 years is equivalent to a century in AI at the rate that it is going. So where it will go after that, beyond that, is very difficult to tell. And will it outright replace us completely? I don't know. Um, I I think it will be very good for society in general to say decisions must continue to be made by humans. And this is something I think that we need to take a bit seriously, and we need to take it with a sense of responsibility. So some of the case studies that are, AI actually being used out there, one very simple case study is where the police force in a particular state in America was using AI to detect criminals, let's say through face recognition and so on. And a particular person was picked up and identified by the AI as the perpetrator. And he happened to be a black male. And the once the police picked him up, took him to the police station with the accusation and so on, and they showed him the evidence, like the photo of him committing the crime. He was like, but can't you see that that is not me? Like, isn't it evident that this person does not even closely resemble me? And the police officers were simply not taking any responsibility and saying, but the AI picked you, identified you, so we cannot do anything. And to me, that is inexcusable. No way, no. The decision has to remain within the human. We have the capacity to discern the information that is being presented in front of us more than any AI system can or will ever be able to. And I think it is important that we continue to think of AI as an assistant, not as a replacement.
Oh, absolutely. Because when we think about AI in healthcare, I can't imagine the surgeon saying, "Oh, no, no, no! I cut it out because AI told me to to do that." Can you?
Having said that, for instance, this is one area where, for instance, with breast cancer, AI does better than your human radiologist, right? So in identifying cancer, but it still requires that human to double check and to make sure that, oh yes, I would have missed this, but now that the AI is identifying, I can confirm. There is that still that human responsibility step, and I think that has to remain.
Mm, absolutely. So when I think about education, what I love about possibilities of AI is the personalized learning, which is so important, and I can see that with, for example, and it's a very simple model here, and our family is on this quest on Duolingo, so we have some competition going, but really I like that approach of going through the words that I didn't remember the first time round. So definitely machine is learning from my mistakes and just feeding it constantly until I get it, stupid. Anyway, what I'm also thinking about when it comes in terms of accessibility, there are different problems that people are facing. So for example, um, let's go here to Maltese language. And we talked about it, Claudia, before. Maltese language for AI is quite tricky because there is not a lot of data. Tell us about your project that you're working on.
So we have several projects in the pipeline.
Ah,
What
I
so
know, multitasking woman, how unrare.
So I have so many projects that sometimes I just can't keep up. But luckily, I have a fantastic team as well working with me. So it's my hat goes off to them because they do a lot of the hard work. So we take various approaches. One of the things that we did at the start, and this was about 3 years ago, now 2 3 years ago, was to develop what is called a birth-based language model. And that has been like the building block to to the development of Maltese processing tools. This was funded by MDIA through the AI strategy and supported by a project called LT Bridge. But this is like, you can consider it as a foundation model on which to build specific, more task oriented tools. Now, one of the challenges that we have with Maltese is that, as you said, it's the amount of data that is available is rather small. So we have to look at models in other languages. And what we do is we take on different approaches and we adapt them to Maltese. So that basically means is that you get a neural network, right, with its that is already set up to understand generically what a particular what maybe one language is or what several languages are. And but what I mean, what a language is, it's simply the words, the order of words, words that cluster together, so words that have approximately the same meaning. Like, for instance, I don't know, if I talk about a cat and a dog, right? These would cluster together because they're both animals. But if I talk about cat and beach, they might not cluster together because they don't co-occur. A cat hardly ever goes to the beach. They're afraid of water in general. So you don't find this occurrence commonly. So basically, this is what a foundation model would understand. Now, what we do is we take such a model and we adapt it to start understanding a little bit the Maltese language and how that co-occurs, how words in Maltese co-occur. And with this, we simply, can take advantage of what the model would have learned in other languages and transfer, or rather use that as a foundation and continue building up specifically for Maltese.
Fascinating. And I guess you're using a lot of frameworks for that, because we know that European Union is all about framework. You have to fill in a lot of forms. So is there going to be AI that will replace all these papers? Because actually I was asked yesterday by ladies from Ukraine who had to fill in the form for application and within the program from European Union. And I'm wondering whether you also have the same problem of producing so much paperwork rather than doing it online.
I mean, at the end of the day, there is an element which might be replaced by AI. And again, certain things we definitely will want to replace them by AI. But I think some other things, it is important that we continue taking the responsibility to write them ourselves. For the simple reason that for certain applications and so on, it's important to get your facts right. It's important to make sure that the content is, direct. Whenever I've tried tools like ChatGPT, I found that the writing tends to be nowhere close to my style of writing. It tends to be very bombastic. To me, it sounds very American. And there is no way that I would want to present a proposal or an application that seems to have been, created by an American person. Um, so, the, yeah, I will definitely want to see, a broader language representation. And this is just talking in English, right? So even the models that we have in English are not really representative of the English used around the world, but rather of American English. So yeah.
So I think one of the solution to fight the bias or to improve the models is continuing monitoring the data and updating models and addressing emerging biases and improving performance overall. And I think also sometimes when we look at these groovy applications, new releases, there is lack of transparency that really worries me, because we put some very sensitive data, and actually we've seen in the case of some companies, they said they banned using AI at work because they are just scared of some data leaks or anything that could be fed to AI, that could potentially harm the company. So, since we are heading towards the end of the show, I need to wrap up, Claudia, and I mean, not you, Claudia, but wrap up our discussion, Claudia. So, I'm wondering, is there something that you're particularly excited about AI?
Oh, I think all of it is exciting at the moment. I mean, I believe it's like we're at a crossroad, and there is so much that hangs in the balance in terms of how AI is going to be developed and used, how it's going to impact society, how in this idea that it replaces workers, maybe it replaces workers in certain areas. How are we going to go about this? Um, you know, so there is a lot that hangs in the balance, and I think AI is going to be a very impactful technology, whether like in terms of broad picture, it's overall more positive or more negative is going to depend a lot on us individually. And I think there I continue to stress the importance that we keep decision making and responsibility for decisions in terms of the ownership has to remain human. AI can do everything else.
Mm. So you wouldn't like to see a president of Malta, which will be AI generated president?
I would like to see a president of Malta, or rather the prime minister, because the president in Malta is not a
Not
decision making
representative.
there,
Yep.
right? A prime minister assisted by AI, where
Mm.
because at the end of the day the strength of AI is in terms of the analysis of the data analysis. So at the touch of a button you can have certain analysis that and maybe as well you can see the different types of decisions. So for instance, let's imagine um, deciding whether there should be an increase in tax or a decrease in tax or keeping it the same, how that is going to impact, and seeing exactly the type of projections and how it could impact different sectors of society and so on, to really gain a full like to gain a broader picture and a broader perspective. I think that would be fantastic. But at
Well,
the end of the
yeah.
day, the decision has to remain human, because a human has empathy. You mentioned that in the beginning, right? How the importance of empathy, the importance of taking into consideration, it's not just at the end of the day, let's say, the financial benefit, but there has to be the social benefit, right? And I think humans can measure that. An AI can think in terms of numbers, but
Mm.
not
I guess
necessarily.
it's a very naive way of thinking, that the prime minister will think about losing his, not thinking about losing his position at some stage. So I think the first question would be how to remain in my seat, and then the socio-economic benefits of it. But anyway, I might be here really talking badly about the politicians, so I better stop. So, Claudia, anything exciting happening in your world? What's the next big thing for you?
So, well, there's a lot of stuff that we're working on. I think, again, this is like at the moment, it feels very much like a turning point in terms of technologies for Maltese, simply because we are at a process, for instance, where we're about to launch our automatic speech recognition for Maltese. We're collaborating with the government in terms of potential spell checker. We're collaborating a lot with industry to see how we can really assist even industry to take up Maltese processing technology. So, for instance, we have a project that is about a chatbot for in Maltese. There are a lot of potential avenues, um, and obviously, I'm trying to do everything, um, and I drive my team crazy in the process. But definitely, I think there is a lot of stuff that's in the next 1 year or 2 years will really start seeing a shift, and seeing technological tools becoming available outright across all sectors.
Well, just to give a little bit of perspective to those who are listening to us, there are approximately 570,000 native speakers of Maltese as of 2012, and around 440,000 people who speak Maltese in at least six territories. So, do you know how much data you will be able to get? For your model?
So at the moment, we have something around just under 500 million words. That's the size of the corpus that we use. And we're always increasing that number. What we're trying to do is we're careful in terms of the sources for this data, so that as much as possible, we have Maltese, which hopefully is written correctly. The element of bias is a bit of a question mark, but these are aspects that we are, let's say, conscious of and working potentially so that we avoid any possible biases. Of course, you really become aware of potential biases once a model is integrated into a product and actually used by people. Because it's one thing when I am using it in a lab environment and I have my parameters of how I am using that AI model. But then it is another thing once it's out there and being used by the general population. So that is something that's going to be, I think, a very much works in progress until things settle.
Fingers crossed, Claudia. Now, since we are talking about learning, what is the number one book you wish you read before you started your career?
So, one person that I admire a lot is Brené Brown. She became viral when she had her TED talk on vulnerability. And one of the things that I follow is her podcast. She has actually two podcasts. One is called Unlocking Us, and one is called Dare to Lead. And Dare to Lead, I would say, is a fantastic podcast. So all women out there who are, thinking about, wanting inspiration in terms of, how to become effective leaders. Her advice is fantastic.
But in the
Um,
meantime, stay with us because we're going to talk about the life lesson quote. What is your number one quote and how did it change you?
Again, it's from Brené Brown. So
Excellent.
well, it's actually not a standard quote, but basically, whilst reading another book called To Courage, I think it was called. There was a part about be audacious, go beyond yourself. And that was something that kind of stuck with me when I was reading. Um,
Why?
it's yes, many times it's like we are we hold ourselves back, maybe out of fear, maybe because it's we see as something needing too much work or too much effort. And I have it stuck on my monitor. Whenever I'm having a difficult moment, I think, okay, I need to go beyond myself. I need to continuously push my boundaries, push my comfort zone. And yeah, that's something that sticks.
And all the sisters around us. And now we are heading towards the end of the show. So I guess it's going to be Brené Brown that you're going to invite to the private breakfast somewhere. Where? And share with us.
Forget forget breakfast. What I would love, is simply to be a fly on the wall and follow her around and see how she leads her organization, how she, her work ethic seems to be fantastic, the type of advice that she gives. She often describes, the problems she encounters. She's a very good storyteller. So I would definitely, want to follow her, shadow her for like at least a full day. Breakfast is
Claudia.
not long enough.
Oh, absolutely, especially if it's Maltese breakfast. Now, Claudia, I've got to tell you one thing you probably don't realize. There were moments during our discussion when we were sitting at the table and we were talking about how to bring more women into technology in Malta. And we listen to the same boring talks. We need more women and we need more women. And there was this mic drop moment because Claudia spoke. So I'm sure there is lots of flies that wish to listen to Claudia. And if you want to listen to Claudia, you can join the university or you can connect to her on LinkedIn or however you wish. Now, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know, as Alice Walker said. The more we talk, the more I realize we are out of time for today's live stream. So, just a word of thank you notes to our commenters, Jane, Olga Vasina, IPO Meeting, Patrick's Opinion. And next week, we have a pre-recorded version for our dear audience to listen to. ADHD, multitasking, and leading like a boss. I hope you can listen to that. But in the meantime, enjoy this show, enjoy next shows. And Claudia, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. Your work is not only transforming the digital landscape in Malta and beyond and paving the way for a more sustainable future of humans, not just women. Thank you so much. That's episode 148 of PhD Livestream. Thank you to Dr. Claudia Borg to stay updated and never miss next PhD episode. Follow that channel, whichever you're watching, whether it's podcast, whether it's live stream on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Stay updated and never miss opportunity to ask a question to experts. As always, our positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look harder. Today is your future. Hack it. Thank you.
Thanks, Beata.